All right, continuing on in Unit 10, Trigonometry, the unit circle. This is the next lesson, and it is called Angles in the Coordinate Plane. Okay. So its first definition, an angle is said to be in standard position when its vertex is at the origin and one ray is on the positive x-axis. Standard position. The initial side of the angle is the ray on the x-axis. That's the initial side. The other ray is called the terminal side of the angle. So we have the initial side and the terminal side. So let's look at a couple diagrams of that. Let's start with the positive rotation. So I'm going to color the initial side in red. Let me do that in red so you can see it. Because this is not in color. The copiers at the school are not in color. Okay, that's the initial side right there in red. And this is going to be the terminal side in blue. Okay. So if you think about it, this is 0 degrees. If you think back to lesson 1, this is 90 degrees, this is 180, and that's 270. So this angle right here, if I'm opening from here and going to there, if you follow the arrow, that is a 135 degree angle. Okay. Notice how that one is going counterclockwise. Counterclockwise. And for a negative rotation, that goes clockwise. So again, let me color the initial side in red so you can see it better. That is the initial side in red. And let me color the terminal side in blue so you can see it better. Okay. As you can see, this angle is going clockwise, so that's going to be a negative angle. And in this case, it is a negative 45 degree angle. Okay. So that's initial sides and terminal sides. And you have to know the difference between whether the angle is going to be positive or whether the angle is going to be negative. So here you go, example 1. Identify the measure of each angle in standard position. So be careful. Notice, look at the way the arrow is going. Okay, so you want this angle right here, from here to here. Okay, you know this entire quadrant is 90. If this part is 50, and this part right here has to be 40 degrees. So that's the answer, 40 degrees. I'll label that down below. That's the answer. This next one is going to be a negative angle because notice how it's going clockwise. This is going to be a negative angle. Okay. So first thing, let's find this small angle right there. What is that small angle right there? This entire quadrant has to be 90. If that's 65, then this part has to be 25. Okay, because that entire quadrant is 90. Now this is going to be a negative answer, like I said, because it's going clockwise. So we're going negative 90 and then another negative 25. So altogether this is a negative 115 degree angle. Okay, we're going clockwise, so it's going to be a negative angle. So negative 90 and then another negative 25 will be negative 115. Good. Part C. Again, notice the arrow right here, okay? It's going around once, one entire circle around, and another part, okay? So this part right here is going to be 40, kind of like example 1A. This part will be 40. But the final answer is not 40. The final answer is going to be one circle plus 40. So it's going to be 360 plus 40 is 400 degrees. Suppose I went around 2 entire circles, then that would be 720. Suppose I went around 3 entire circles, then it would be 1080. This particular problem goes around once, so 360, and then plus another 40 will be 400 degrees. Okay. Example 2, sketch each angle in standard position. So, for 45-degree angle, it's going to be basically, if this is 0 degrees, this is 90, so it's going to be halfway in between. Let me try to draw that. I mean, approximately is sketching, okay, approximately. I also like to color in the initial side too, even though it's kind of hard to see. You can see it a little bit. Okay, this is red right here. And let's just put the arrow, like we saw on the first page. Let's go like that right there. That looks good. That's a 45-degree angle. Example 2B, sketch a 320-degree angle. Okay, so think about it like this. If this is 0 degrees, that's going to be 90 degrees. Think back to the first lesson. That's 180 degrees. That's 270 degrees. And when you get back here, it's 360. Okay, so it's somewhere between 270 and 360. Maybe like a little more than halfway, but it's definitely in this quadrant down here. Okay, you should know that. Definitely in this quadrant right here. A little more than halfway. So I'm going to sketch it like this. I think this is going to look good. Again, it's just a sketch. It's not perfect. I'd say that's close enough. I like the color on the initial side too, even though it's a little hard to see. Let's put the arrow like that. That looks good. That's about a 320-degree angle. Part C, sketch a negative 110-degree angle. Okay, so that means we're going to go clockwise. So this will be like negative 90 right here. This will be negative 180. Maybe I should put those in to help you see. So just to help you see it more, this might help you see it better. If that's 0 degrees, this was 90 degrees in part 1, part A. This was 0 degrees, 90 degrees, 180 degrees, 270 degrees. Maybe that'll help you see it better. So for this one, let's call this 0 degrees. Let's call this negative 90 degrees. And let's call this negative 180. So somewhere between negative 90 and negative 180, closer to negative 90, of course. So I'll do something like this. I think that looks pretty good like that. Let's also draw the initial side. It looks nicer that way. A little hard to see it, but there you go. And let's draw the arrow. So we're going this way. Okay. Part D, sketch a 990-degree angle. Oh boy. Okay, so think about it like this. If I do 360 plus 360, that gives me 720. So this is going to be 2 full times around plus, jot this down over here, 2 full times around plus, if I do 990 minus 720, that gives me 270. So it's 2 full times around plus another 270. Okay, so here we go. We got 2 full times around, so 1, 2, 2. That's 2 full times around. And then plus another 270. Plus 90. Plus 180. Plus 270. Be right there. So let me draw my sides. Terminals, it's kind of hard to see because on the axis. But again, I'm looking for the arrows that you just drew. That's very important. Make sure you draw those arrows. This will be the initial side right here. Again, the initial side and the terminal side are really hard to see when they're on the axes. So I want to make sure you draw these. Okay, this is the key thing you need to have. Okay. Moving on to the next page. Okay, one definition. Coterminal angles are angles in standard position with the same terminal side. Like co-workers work at the same place. Collinear points are points on the same line, all back to geometry. Coterminal angles are angles with the same terminal side. Okay. So for example, let's say we have a 120-degree angle. Okay, so let me draw that arrow in blue so you can see it better. Look at that 120-degree angle. And then look at a negative 240-degree angle. I'll do that one in red. So you can see it a little better. Notice how they each have the same terminal side. So they are called coterminal angles. Okay, they each have the same terminal side right there. So they're called coterminal angles. Just like co-workers work at the same place. Coterminal, they have the same terminal side. Okay. Notice how if you add 360, because the circle is 360, if you add 360 to this, you get that angle. So suppose I do 120 plus 360, I get 480. That's another coterminal angle, okay? Suppose I add another 360, I get 840. That's another coterminal angle. Suppose I add another 360, I get 1200. That's another coterminal angle, okay? So, example 3. Find an angle with a positive measure and an angle with a negative measure that are coterminal with the given angle, okay? So multiples of 360 are coterminal. So if I do 65 degrees plus 360, I get 425 degrees. So that's a positive coterminal angle. This question asks for a negative angle measure as well, positive and a negative. So I'm going to take 65 and I'm going to subtract 360. That'll give me negative 295. That's a negative angle that's coterminal at 65 degrees. You can keep going. You can subtract 360 over and over and over. Those are all going to be coterminal with 65 degrees. Now let's do part B. It says 410 degrees. I'm going to do, I'll do minus 360. So give me 50 degrees. I'm going to do plus 360. Actually, no, I don't want to do that because that's still going to be positive. So let me change that a little bit. Let me change that plus to a minus because the question said one positive and one negative. So let me change that to a minus. I'm going to subtract 360 twice. Get the white out 1 second and dry. Okay, so I'm going to do minus 360 again. that will give me a negative 1. That'll be negative 310 degrees. Okay, so I just added on an extra problem. If you're in person and I gave you a copy of the note packets, I just added on part C just now. In case I failed to mention it, there's more than one right answer for these. So you could do 410 plus 360, and you could get 770 and say that's an answer. I chose to go with these two, but the question did say one positive and one negative, so I have one positive and one negative. Okay, so part C. Find a positive and a negative coterminal angle with pi over 4 radians. Okay, so instead of adding 360 degrees, I'm going to add 2 pi, because 360 equals 2 pi. So I'm going to do pi over 4 plus 2 pi, which is the same as 8 pi over 4. So that'll give me 9 pi over 4 radians. And I'm also going to subtract 2 pi. But instead of writing 2 pi, I'm going to do minus 8 pi over 4. That'll be negative 7 pi over 4 radians. Okay. Last page. For an angle theta, that's the Greek symbol for theta, in standard position, the reference angle it's called a reference angle. The reference angle is the positive acute angle formed by the terminal side of theta, the angle, and the x-axis. Okay, so 2 key points. Okay, the reference angle is always positive and it's always acute. That means less than 90. Okay, those are the 2 key things. It's always positive and it's always acute. Okay, so again, if we're talking about this angle right here, if this is the angle right here, the terminal side, then the reference angle would be this angle right here. Okay, because it has to be positive and it has to be acute. It's not this angle right here because that's obtuse. It's more than 90. Okay, it's acute and it's positive. Okay, acute and it's positive. That's the reference angle. Okay. So this last example, sketch each angle and find the measure of the reference angle. Okay. So 125 degrees. Okay, so again, if this is 0 degrees right there, this will be 90 degrees right there. This will be 180 degrees right there. 125 is between 90 and 180. A little closer than 90, but not that much closer to 90. So I'll draw it like this. Maybe like that. So that's the angle right there. So this part right here is going to be 35 degrees. The reference angle to the angle I just drew is, I'll use a colored pencil, and I'm going to color that in blue. Okay? It's the positive acute angle between the terminal side and the x-axis. So that's going to be this angle right here in blue. Okay? Again, it's acute, so it's not this angle right here because that's obtuse. It's the acute angle between the terminal side and the x-axis. So if it's at 35, then this angle in blue has to be 55. So reference angle equals 55 degrees. That's all I'm going to say about reference angles for now. Let's try one more. Negative 105. So if that's 0 degrees right there, this will be negative 90 degrees right there, and this will be negative 180. So between negative 90 and negative 180, very close to negative 90, I'd say. So maybe like that, I guess, something like that. Just a sketch for now. Okay, so this is the reference, this is the angle that I just sketched. Now the reference angle, it's positive and it's acute, and it's between the terminal side and the x-axis, not the terminal side and the y-axis, the terminal side and the x-axis. So this will be it right here in blue. That's the reference angle. Okay, between the terminal side and the x-axis, not the y-axis. So if this part right here is 15 degrees, then the reference angle will be 75 degrees because this entire quadrant is 90. That's 15, so this will be 75. Reference angle equals 75 degrees. Okay. And that's the end of that lesson. Angles in the coordinate plane.